unless my intuition is way off, I think we've got an awful lot of material to cover, much more than we thought when it was originally scheduled. I want to thank everybody for attending this evening. And of course, I want to thank the Jewish Community Center of Ann Arbor and Terry and Noemi Herzig for helping shepherd us through the process here. And I especially want to thank Terry Swartzberg, our guest. What time is it where you're at, Terry?
It's 1 o'clock in the morning, and I am armed with my coffee. I'm ready to go.
Oh, good, good. You look like you're ready to go, and you're coming to us from Munich, Germany. How long have you lived in Munich?
I lived in Munich for 37 years. I lived in Germany for 42 years. I was in Berlin before that.
And you're a Reformed Jew from New York City originally, is that correct?
Reconstructionist, actually, Society for the Advancement of Judaism. My temple now is Reformed Beit Shalom in Munich.
How many Reformed temples are there in Germany?
There's 145 congregations now in Germany, and of those, 32 are Reformed.
All right. So they have a beachhead there, a significant beachhead. Why did you move to Germany?
I think it was just purely a matter of happenstances. My cousin Linda, and my friend Baba Lou, I see lots of friends and family members attending in Shalom Mishpacha. It was pure happenstance. I had a wild life. I was a young journalist in Asia. I lived as a child with my father, who was an anthropologist, our family in India for a couple of years in a village without running water, electricity, telephones. And that put me on a trajectory that got me to Berlin in 1979 as a cub reporter for the International Herald Tribune. And Berlin in the Cold War was an absolutely fascinating place for everybody, but especially for journalists.
And how old were you at the time?
27.
27. And you'd already experienced quite a bit. Any interesting stories that you covered while you were a journalist?
Many interesting stories. For instance, I exposed the fact that the Stasi, which were the state security people, that they were robbing normal East German citizens of their collections of valuable antiques, coins, whatever, to sell to Sotheby's and to Christie's in the West in huge warehouses. And it was a very well organized crime that Western auction houses were participating in. And that got me a front page story on the International Herald Tribune.
Neat. Any others of note?
Yes, I had a very amusing time. To understand that, that West Berlin, which was where I lived, there was a wall around it. As you may remember, East Berlin was communist. And the people in East Berlin could not travel with the exception of people who were over the age of 60, and they were allowed to travel relatively freely to the West. And what they did was, to get money for their folks back home, they started smuggling. They smuggled everything, family possessions, over to the West. And Chuck and old friends, this is not kidding, an acquaintance of mine smuggled a huge dining room table, piece by piece, buried under huge petticoats from the East to the West. And just as she got it done, they sawed it apart and she strapped it to her leg. They didn't check her, thank goodness. And just as she got it done, guess what happened? The wall came down.
That is an incredible story. And I understand there's an interesting picture that somebody shared with you where you were at least in the presence of somebody who's been in the news lately.
Yes, that's an interesting story. In 1996, I was sent to Petersburg. Russia was not my beat for the International Herald Tribune. I wrote for the newspaper for 25 years. I covered Eastern Europe and Germany and Austria, did a lot of business reporting. Their reporter was not available, and they sent me to Petersburg and to meet a man called Sobchak, who was supposed to be the next Gorbachev. He was a wonderfully capable politician, the governor of the state of Petersburg. Of course, they railroaded him out of politics, and then they poisoned him, which of course is the standard Russian way of dealing with promising politicians. And in his echelon, and there's a picture of me as the star reporter from the Herald Tribune standing next to Anatoly Sobchak. The second row are people who are now ministers, still ministers in Putin's regime. And in the third row, a tiny little man, really a small man, wearing a very bad suit, Vladimir Putin. have no memory of him. Just as
Whatever happened to him?
Whatever happened to him, he was a yes. He wasn't even a yes man. He was a man who had a nod while the yes men said yes. And 3 years later, he was the president of Russia. It was like, you know, the most incredible thing I'd ever heard.
And then at some point you left the International Herald Tribune. And how did you?
The Herald Tribune died and became part of the New York Times, the mothership. And I started on what is called public relations and business information. Did that for a number of years. Had a lot of government, EU, state government of Bavaria, German government, many prestigious things. And for the last number of years, I've been what I call an ethical campaigner. I only do campaigns that are supposed to tikkun olam, which is an expression you're all familiar with, heal the world. I do climate, or did climate for the UN, still do climate out of my own interest. And for the last 10, 11 years, I've devoted my life, dedicated my life to commemoration of the victims of the Holocaust.
Which we will get into in more detail. What's a typical day for you?
It's a very good question. A difficult day. I get up very early. I hope you all are early risers.
Not tomorrow.
Well, I've got interns coming at 10 o'clock, so I get up early and research Holocaust victims, talk to people about placing of Stolperstein, which we'll hear about, organize events. We have a lot of commemorative events, faces for the names, perhaps we'll talk about that later on, and send out a lot of social media. That's one of my big responsibility. There are 1,800 organizations in the Stolperstein family. There are 28 countries, but one of my unofficial roles is I'm responsible for a lot of the public relations that's done, and I do it quite often, all the social media, and that's how my day generally starts.
And if it's not a work day, what do you do? What do you enjoy?
As I'm a very avid mountain climber, cross-country skier, swimmer, and cyclist, and you know, I buzz about on my road bike or my trekking bike. I did today. It was pretty much at freezing, you know, it was like 32 or 33 degrees in Munich, but I went out in the cold wind and did 40 Ks, 25 miles real quickly, just so I got away from my desk for a little while. So that's a typical day, is getting some good vigorous exercise.
So Big Al.
And if I may add, cooking. I love to cook. I'm supposedly, people may be just kind to me. I have a lot of cooking classes. I invite you all to come to my cooking classes in Israeli street food. And I do that very often as a way of building bridges between Jews and non-Jews, especially with young Muslims, refugees, people like that. In Dachau, of course, where the concentration camp is located, at the end of the month, on the 30th, we're going to have a big cook down with lots of young refugees from the Near East, Middle East, and it's sponsored by the city. And we're going to hopefully build bridges there, answer their questions about Judaism. If they are anti-Semitic, reduce that, show what a Jew is really like. And food, of course, is something we all have in common.
Are some of these events virtual?
Yes, they are very often virtual, yes.
How can our viewers learn about them?
Well, I invite you all to send me your emails via Chuck and Naomi if you want, and I'll put you on our mailing list, and we'd be delighted to have you attend virtually or in person.
You will find at some point, maybe it's even there now in chat, my email address, but for those who wish to write it down, it's chuck@lba80 .gmail. So you're also an author. One of the books that I found particularly intriguing was something about enjoying bad relationships.
Yes, this is a book that cannot unfortunately say that I had a relatively calm love life, and I decided it was time to write a satiric book about relationships, and I certainly enjoyed writing it, and I hope if you read it or anybody reads it, you might enjoy it too.
Want to give us
sure that you are all in happy relationships and you have absolutely no need of this book.
None. But could you give us just one or two tips that?
Yes, I mean, being in a bad relationship has tremendous economic advantages. For one thing, you shouldn't, you were all from lovely places like Ann Arbor and Bloomfield Hills, and you have beautiful houses. But if you're in a bad relationship, it'd be a good idea to live in like a low rent district where the police are eager to come and at a moment's notice. You don't need to worry about having expensive furniture because you won't have it. You'll be hitting each other over the head with it or throwing plates at each other so you can save on porcelain. And you have low rents and you don't have any decoration, things like that. Things like that. That was just purely for fun.
Yeah, so it has lots of good tips.
Lots of good tips, but as I say, you people obviously do not need them because you all live in beautiful homes and have beautiful relationships.
Oh, yeah, yes.
This is being recorded. This is being recorded, by the way.
Yes, I know it's being recorded. I wrote the book, Alan. I know about it. I'm prepared. If you write a book, you have to be prepared to stand.
I was starting to say, you and Alan have an awful lot in common. The exercise routine made me think of that. And it's
2 peas in a pod.
Yep.
That's it.
Yep. Clearly, you have an informal style about you. How does that go over in Germany?
This is a tremendous question, and it's really a very good question. And I think I have cultivated this style as an inner response. Germany is a very rules-oriented country, more than you can possibly imagine. And since I came as an adult and I just came as an expatriate, I've forged my own niche, and I am very much disarm the Germans by not observing many of the rules. And if you've been there for 42 years, you know what the rules are, you know how to observe them. And I mean, of course, I'm a homeowner. I keep my house immaculately clean and my sidewalk and all the things that Germans would expect you to do. But on the other hand, for instance, we have this thing, and Germans are very much formal you, and not Nomi would know this, formal and personal you. You're supposed to say Sie very much and do only to family and friends and other people. And I just use the familiar form do all the time. I'm not going to get involved in that. And the Germans find it a bit unsettling and very disarming and very exciting, actually. And the Germans also know that I'm a very serious person because my subject is always commemoration of the victims of the Holocaust. So they're a little bit mystified that a person who seems so relaxed could spend his life, commemorating the victims of the Holocaust. It gives them something to think about.
I must admit, I once was in Austria on business. And then it was at night, and it was cold out, and the wind's whipping. And I come to a street corner, and the sign, and there's some people there, and the sign says, "Don't walk." There is not a vehicle in sight, and there hasn't been one. And they're all standing there. It was just shocking to me. Someone want to know what's the name of your book on relationships?
It's called How to Enjoy Bad Relationships.
Something the world needs. And why is chutzpah your favorite word?
Well, I mean, I think, it takes, I think it's, first of all, it's a very Jewish trait. I think, and also you have to look where chutzpah comes from. Desperation, very often. We Jews, to quote my mother's boyfriend, he was 79 when they met, she was 80. Jews are always supposed to be so innovative, he said. Harold said he had survived Auschwitz and 8 other camps. He'd come to America and founded a good life for himself, started a good life. And he said, everybody always says how innovative we Jews are. The sad fact is we had no choice but to be innovative. We were always desperate. We had only the ideas in our head. Nobody wanted us. Nobody gave us any way to earn a living. We had to scratch a living out of our brains and out of our chutzpah. We had to dare. And I think it's something that's in all of us, all the people today that are watching, is this perhaps genetic feeling. We have to make something happen and we have to be bold. And I'm sure that applies to all the people here. Hutzpah is in our souls and in our actions.
When below your name on an email, it says campaigns, healing, enlightening, and enthralling the world. What are you trying to convey there?
Well, I think that, there's a lot of ways to reach people nowadays, and a lot is done by, figuring out hits and clicks and everything else like that. I was taught how to run a campaign by a man called Saul Alinsky. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. Anybody ever heard of him? Did you know Saul Alinsky, Chuck?
Not personally, but I
you know of him.
Yeah, a political organizer. Yeah.
Right, and he was the one from Chicago. He was the person who built up this idea of getting disparate groups together, finding a common denominator, and doing wild things. And this is an adult chat, I'm sure. He taught some people that we later have heard of, perhaps Hillary and Bill Clinton, Michelle and Barack Obama. They literally are his disciples. And Saul Alinsky came to Oshkosh High. I was student council president at the time in Wisconsin. Wisconsin, by the way, is a state to the west, to the left of Michigan, in case you guys don't know that. And he came and he told us about some of his methods. And I think they registered with me very strongly. I like to do things that enthrall people, move people, surprise people. It's not about, getting a number of clicks or anything. It's about events and ideas that really advance our causes and build up huge coalitions, because that's what you have to do. If you're I'm a normal person. I don't have a huge amount of money. I don't have a huge amount of influence, but if I have strong ideas and fun and exciting and interesting ideas, I can build up a huge amount of support.
And you have. You've been in Germany since the
1980.
Ukraine, yeah, was part of the Soviet Union. How has what's been the reaction in Germany to the invasion by the Russians?
We're all like you are. We can't sleep. We're horrified. We're scared. And I was born in 1953. As some of you are as old as I am, you will well remember the Cuban Missile Crisis. I personally am as scared as I was during the Cuban. I was 9 years old, and I remember in Bergenfield, New Jersey, where Linda and I grew up with Gary and my brothers and sisters, they telling us when we were going to school, you may not come back this afternoon, which raises the interesting question: why did they send us to school in the first place? Okay, we're horrified. There's been a huge outpouring of support. I am going to take in, that's a story I could tell. We have two measures now. I have an association which you gently can support. It's called Jews, Jews, Jews Engaged with Society. And as of tomorrow evening, we're going to start two things. One is called an open table, where Ukrainian refugees can book dinner. I love to cook, as I say. I love to entertain people. Hopefully they'll all be vaccinated 3 times. And they'll come to my house and have a chance to meet there are a lot of Jews coming to Munich, by the way, from the Ukraine. Non-Jews are also welcome. And we will come, we will eat together, and we will solve their problems and talk about the problems and get them informally integrated into German society. A lot of questions that you can simply answer over a dinner table, like how do you get welfare, or where can you get food, or where can you get accommodation, or stuff like that. So we're starting an open table tomorrow evening. I'll be sending along the link to you all.
Excellent. And the government's reaction?
The government's reaction, we all love Chancellor Merkel, and she's gone. We have Olaf Scholz. We didn't think he was up to her standard, but he has really, in the last few weeks, surprised us and delighted us. He has risen to the occasion. Germany has taken an uncompromising stance. We're going to beef up our defenses. There's been a huge outpouring of support. For instance, my congregation, Bet Shalom, we've been sending, food and medical supplies to them, to our temple, and our temple is sending them to a synagogue in Lvov in Western Ukraine, getting the supplies there and organized the transport already. I've never seen such a quick and effective response in any time.
The story going around New York is that it took Putin to unite the EU and NATO. I understand there's been public demonstrations.
Huge ones. We just had one in Munich on Saturday. 45,000 people came, and it was amazing. Outward in Berlin, there were 500,000 people, and we're totally behind Ukraine. As I say, they're coming to us now, and people are greeting them at our train station, our central train station. The Ukrainians are literally pouring out of the trains, even probably as we speak right now. And there are people welcoming them, clapping them, and taking them off to emergency accommodation.
There's an interesting parallel here in what happened in World War II. Do the Germans reflect upon that? how
The
wars
Germans,
start?
being the fact that the Germans attacked the Soviet Union and were responsible for the death of 25 million Soviet citizens.
Yeah. Do they see the parallel now? And is that why initially there was appeasement? There was appeasement, and do you think that informs the German reluctance to appease?
Yes, I think we've all learned the lesson that from Munich in 1938, and Germans and everybody else have learned the lesson that a bully like Putin, there's nothing to be gained by trying to appease him, And I've been amazed how, like, countries like Denmark or even Sweden or Switzerland, that are traditionally, Sweden and Switzerland being neutral, Finland being a vassal state of the Soviet Union for many years, how they're sending arms and supplies to the Ukraine. It's just been a tremendous outgrowing of unanimous support. It's been very heartening. If there's anything heartening at the moment, that's that, along with Zelensky, our favorite Jewish comedian turned hero, and the incredible resistance of the Ukrainians. Kiev has not fallen, and I don't think it's going to. I don't think it's going to. I think Putin has really miscalculated.
We all wonder what transpired with the Israeli prime minister's 3-hour meeting with Putin. I guess we can only speculate. And then didn't he go to Germany?
Yes, he did. Bennett, yeah, he went there, and we have no idea. I think when Germany beforehand, we have no idea what transpired. Also with Macron, we don't know. We have hopes, but we don't know.
Well, doesn't Israel walks a fine line with Russia because of their things that they're able to do into Syria and so on and so forth? I mean, there seems to be some relationship there with Russia that isn't there some agreements or some relationship there? Not walk a fine line in agreeing with what they're doing in Ukraine. They're completely against it, but is there some sort of association that they have in the back of their mind when they're trying to work with Putin?
Well, my source of information is Haaretz, which I assume you also read quite often. And according to Haaretz, it's completely mystified because Russia has been Israel's biggest enemy up until now. I don't know where this sudden rapprochement is coming from, but you remember Russia supported Iran and encouraged them to go nuclear to the extent that they have. And they kept Assad in power, by these horrible bombardments and everything. Where that the Russians are even listening to Israelis is probably a sign that they feel Israel has the ear of the West, not that there's been any rapprochement that I would know. Israelis have no economic interest with the Russians. Russia has no economic interest with Israel. And of course one has to say, about 15 to 20% of all Israelis are from the Ukraine or Russia or someplace like that. But, there's a huge Russian population, which is now being integrated in Israel. As you all know, you've all been to Israel. It's hard to find a Russian ghetto anymore. They've all intermarried and, passed on their genes and everything like that.
What's it like being a Russian or Russian heritage in Germany right now? I noticed that the conductor of the Munich Symphony.
Yeah, Gergiev, Valery Gergiev. Well, he just got fired, and I think that was a very good signal because Gergiev was, he's a fantastic conductor. I hope some of you may have heard him. He's an amazing conductor, but he's been Putin's lapdog for many years, and he didn't distance himself from Putin. I thought it was entirely justified. I mean, what you have to realize is that a lot of the Russians in Germany are Jewish. Chuck, in our previous discussion, you asked what percent of the Jews in Germany are now from the former Soviet Union, and of the 100,000 Jews who belong to congregations, about 4/5 of them came after Petroyska, after Glasnost in 1987 or 1988. So I mean, but they're Jewish, Russian Jewish, and there are Russians there, but they're ethnic Germans who've come over and they support Putin. They're right wing. They're dangerous. They support Putin.
There's a question that I'd be very surprised if you knew the answer to, but on the off chance you do, I just read that Putin is sending soldiers from Syria to Ukraine because the Syrians fight better in urban areas than the Russians.
I have not a military expert.
Yeah. Oh, well.
I've heard that Czech, I don't know how you pronounce it in English, Chechenians in English yeah, they're coming too. They're vicious, and I've heard all that. On the other hand, I've heard that there's lots of volunteers coming from Croatia and Serbia to fight on the side of the Ukrainians, and they're certainly vicious too. So I think the viciousness will cancel each other out. You know, there's a lot of vicious people converging on the Ukraine.
Well, I'm going to be speaking to a couple of Ukrainians in the morning, another show, which we'll talk more about at the conclusion of this one, and you can ask the questions then. So about that. Now, you are a proud Jew, and you want to tell us about your kippah project?
Yes, I think the best way to tell it is, first of all, to admire this kippah. This is
Beautiful.
well, many of mine have been done by Yair Emanuel of Jerusalem. I can strongly recommend him. And this is for our cousin Gary, Linda's brother, and so forth. I don't wear this. I'm a Yankees fan, but I do have it. This is for my football team. I'm sorry, guys. I'm not a Lions fan. I'm a Green Bay Packers fan. If you're from Wisconsin, you can't help it. And this, for instance, I have lots of them. I have over 80. This was done, and this is very moving. This was done by 9th graders in a Montessori middle school. They took some of my kippot and decorated them with their messages, and then I wear them. They, you know, Star of David and Stolperstein and everything else like that. I think that's a very beautiful message. And for the last 9 years, I've been wearing a kippah in public in Germany since December 1st, 2012. And it originally started out as an attempt, purely an experiment to see if I were safe as a Jew in Germany, because in the synagogue and among my many Jewish friends, everybody kept on giving tips on how not to be visibly Jewish in Germany. The presumption was, in the moment where you said you're Jewish, and said somebody, hi, I'm Jewish, or you wore a Star of David or a kippah, or you read a newspaper in Hebrew, the anti-Semites would pounce upon you and spit you and beat you and everything else like that. The only safety that Jews would have in Germany is not being identifiably Jewish. And I said to myself, I've been living in Germany for over 30 years, I said, if the moment I put on a kippah, something I know from America where Reform Jews like to wear kippah, some do, some don't, but some like to wear it in public. You know, I figured if that were the case, then I was living in the wrong country and I would have to leave. And the story is, I was at the funeral of Mitek Pemper. Mitek Pemper was a real hero of Schindler's List, and he died at the age of 92 outside of Munich, and I was at his funeral, and we were all, of course, Jewish cemetery wearing kippot. Even the mayor came, and all sorts of dignitaries, non-Jewish, were there too with kippot. And as soon as we left the cemetery, everybody quickly took their kippot off their heads and hid them. And I didn't. I said, why do I have to do that? Why am I safe inside the cemetery? Am I so unsafe from the moment I take off my kippah? I wear a kippah in public. And they screamed at me, take off your kippah, you're endangering us. And then I decided, okay, I'm going to try it out. So 1st of December, 2012, 9 o'clock in the morning, a Saturday, I went out to shop for vegetables. I'm a vegetarian. And buy coffee, normal shopping on a weekend in Germany. And I put on a kippah, not an attractive one, a black one. And I waited for things to happen. I waited to see if people would insult me or notice me or laugh about me or what. I was apprehensive, trying to look calm, trying not to look nervous. And much to my amazement, you know, nobody insulted me. The local vegetable guy who was from Albania made a funny joke about it. I made a funny joke back. We all laughed. And since then, I've been wearing them in public and everywhere I went. I've been in hundreds of cities all throughout Europe, and not a single bad thing has happened. And that made me, was no planning involved, but has made me a national figure, because I am an advocate for a joyous, vigilant, but self-assured Judaism because of that.
What sort of publicity have you gotten?
Well, you know, if you look at Google me, you'll see I'm on television all the time. You know, they recently did, and Bavaria has a very, you know, very strong public network. It's, you know, it's much, and they did on the 9th anniversary, did a very nice program, and it was the #1 story on evening news about the 9th year, completing the 9th year of my kippah experiment, as they like to call it in Germany. And anytime something happens to Jews, there's something bad happens, a development or something, or the 9th of November, or Reichskristallnacht, Reichspogromnacht or something, the national networks will get me. And I'm a spokesman for a certain view on certain section of Judaism in Germany.
We already have a question that you told me earlier is one that you frequently get. What is the most frequent question you get?
Okay, so Germans, instead of Germans going, what I think the question would be when they come up to me, what experiences have you had? How Germans responded? I mean, that's the question I would ask. But the Germans, being a technically minded people, Chuck and all these viewers, ask a very German question, which is, how does that thing stay on your head? As you can see, I have no hair and I don't have a clip. And, and then I have several answers that none of them find funny. I hope you will find them funny. The first thing I say is, faith keeps these kippah on my head. No laughter. Was that funny?
Yeah.
Okay. And then I say, it's a funny thing that gravity also applies to Jews as well as to non-Jews. Gravity, that keeps it on my head. And then they say, but what happens, when it's windy out? And I say, then we play a fun game everybody can play, called Finding My Kippah. When the wind is strong enough, my kippah will leave my head and fly around, and everybody will help me find it. These I wear are very designed. I think I've trial and error. Yair Manuel and all these kippot stay on my head because they're very sturdy kippot. But I have like other kippot that are like, for instance, this was done by an artist. This is something you from Michigan might want to get. This is a winter kippah. Yes, and winter kippah, but of course it looks great. I look like Groucho Marx. I look like Groucho Marx. But it will not stay on my head for a second. So obviously I cannot wear it. So, the Germans are always interested in the technical side of things. The emotional side, they don't dare touch.
Not ever?
Very rarely. I mean, the most common question I get is when Israelis see me is, they ask me, where are the best kosher restaurants in town? That happens a lot, Misadot. And a lot of Reform Jews have found their way to Bet Shalom, to a Reform synagogue, because when they see me, they realize it's not an Orthodox kippah, it's not, it's a Reform kippah, and then they want to know, and I've gotten several people have joined the synagogue through seeing me in public, just walking around and asking me the question. So
For the benefit of some of our viewers this evening, you want to describe the difference between an Orthodox and a Reform kippah?
Well, I think, an Orthodox kippah is generally black, or it's larger, it's black, it's very restrained. It can be knit. They have a lot of knit ones, and Reformed are, anybody can wear any kippah, but the Reformed ones generally tend to be more colorful. This would be sort of like, I had this. This was from a bar mitzvah that I purloined, or I got, and everything else like that. But then somebody put a nice symbol on it of gay pride, and so I keep that around. So that would be a more Orthodox kippah, but now it's a gay pride kippah, which goes well with this kippah. Beautiful,
Whoa,
huh?
nice.
Yeah, I'm telling you, I'm gonna put it on for you guys. I think you need to see this.
Oh, nice.
Yes. And one time I was recently running around San Francisco in the pre-corona era, and I was in Chinatown with my daughter and her friend and some other friends, and a guy came up to me and asked, where's the Jewish gay pride demonstration? I said, I have no idea and everything. He says, but you're wearing a pink kippah. I said, just wearing a pink kippah. It's not a statement about my sexual orientation.
I think you have the ideally shaped head for this.
And Chuck, and that is exactly my theory. You're a very wise man. I admire you in our long friendship of a few weeks. I've had many reasons to admire you. I think it's genetic. I think that my head, the Jews who did not have this round head, was perfect for kippah, may have not converted or whatever, but many generations, hundreds of generations of Jews have produced the perfect head for this kippah. This is my theory.
It blocks harmful radiation, whatever. So I don't think it'd fit on your head, Al. Sorry.
Nothing works on my
Al's
head.
head looks a lot like my head.
Nothing works on my head. Even
I'll send you, when we see each other, I'll bring you some kippot that definitely work on your head. Don't
mostly the inside part. But I do have a question for you. Can I throw a question back at you regarding your project with the laying of the stones?
Well, that
Yes,
will be
if
next.
Chuck
Oh, is that
here,
next?
like,
All
we
right.
should
I
get
didn't
to
know if
that.
you were going back to that or not.
We're
It-
going to spend some time on that, aren't we, Chuck?
Yes, we are, and soon, but there were some questions. One of which is, do they still have police at Jewish monuments and at the Jewish Center? I was there with my parents in Berlin. I'm sorry, in
Yes.
1997. I don't know.
Yes, as a matter of fact, security has been stepped up. And you have to realize that, and it's a very encouraging statistic, no Jew has come to serious harm in many years in Germany. No Jew. But we were lucky 2 years ago because a man was trying to get into a synagogue in Eastern Germany and the doors withstood his attack. Otherwise, there would have been some people. But the encouraging statistic is no Jew has come to harm, and no Jew has been seriously injured or anything else like that. Most of the anti-Semitic things that are happening in Germany are desecration of cemeteries or stuff like that, or hate mail, which is, which internet and everything else like that. Despite that, we have incredible security in Germany. I don't think you know that level of security. For instance, our congregation, Bet Shalom, has double, I don't know how to call them in English, reinforced glass doors. We have security people inside. We got the police outside. You have to register in advance. And they feel like we need this level of security. I have another opinion, but I do not feel endangered at all. My house was listed as being our synagogue for many years in Google. If you Googled Congregation Bet Shalom in Munich, you got my house because I was a member of the board there responsible for public relations. People came to my house on occasion and wanted to go to services, which I was glad to do, but I had to explain to them, I'm not a rabbi and this is not the synagogue, but if they want to sit down and do Shehekianu with me or Shabbat, I'd be glad to do it. So I'm not afraid. I don't feel like I need any security, but most Jews feel otherwise in Germany.
We have another question. Are white supremacy or far-right groups visible, similar to what happened in Charlottesville, and how does the government deal with them?
They are, and we have our own version. I mean, like everything else in Germany, it's not quite as bad as the United States, but it's there. We have Pegida and AfD and all these organizations. They're especially strong in the East, where it's often the second and third largest political party. They take great pains to act like they're pro-Israel, and they'll have Israeli flags there, but in fact, we feel like they're anti-Semitic. White supremacy, anti-foreigner sentiment is strong in Germany as it is everywhere else in Europe. The good news is, in Corona, it kind of went over to anti-vaxxers now, the lunatic fringe of anti-vaxxers. And at the moment, because what's going on in Ukraine and everything, they're losing their power. They're getting like 9% or 8% in national elections, down from 14 to 15%. But if you go to Eastern Germany, and I will do that sometime, I'll be very curious to see what happens with my kippah. And they are strong in various East German states.
You have an interesting way of finding out, putting yourself in harm's way, potentially. But
I could tell you a story about that if you want.
Please.
So I was in the state of Saxony on a kind of misbegotten Easter vacation with my lady friend at the time, who was from Australia. And we were having lunch in this beautiful castle, in the wonderful castle. And as we walked into the restaurant in this castle, sitting at the next table were 6 skinheads, tattooed with neo-Nazi swastikas and all the things and, and everything else like that. And each of them, and I thought this was kind of amazing, they had the bomber jackets, they were big, and they had the perfect accompaniment. Their lady friends were also bleached blonde and looking ugly and, with chains and everything else like that. And Annie, as I said, was from Australia, had a great sense of humor, looked at them and looked at my kippah, and she said, Terry, I think you're going to be the headlining story in the evening news tonight. I think that, you're in for a bit of a bruising, but you'll get a lot of publicity out of it. So I sat down and waited for the skinheads to notice me, and I keep on waiting for the skinheads to notice me and do something about it. And lunch passed. We had a delicious lunch, vegetarian for me, meat, schnitzel for them. And they paid the bill very meekly and left and didn't attack me. I guess, they had the day off from hitting Jews, beating up on Jews or something else like that. But I don't know. I was very obviously visibly Jewish, but I don't know what the skinheads didn't make an impression on them.
Someone else, and this is the last question on this topic, says that she was hoping to hear more about Germany's reaction to the energy availability, Putin's actions, relief of human suffering, help to refugees. What's being done at the governmental level?
These are all huge questions. I think, you know, we have been too dependent upon Russian gas. I heat with Russian gas here. And I think, as you said, there was an economic appeasement going on in Germany for many years. We do have a huge regenerative energy sector that accounts for 70% of our electricity on good days, sometimes even 100%. We have to do more in traffic and in heating, and that has to go. We're getting out of coal and we're getting out of nuclear energy now. And of course, a lot of those people are saying now we need nuclear energy, which you can see how dangerous it is because the Russians almost blew us all up by attacking the largest nuclear power plant in Europe. We would have been radiated to death, and they too, had they succeeded, and that was a close call. So yeah, Germany has a lot to do there, and we have to encourage regenerative energy, and we have to, you know, we'll just have higher prices. It's just going to be, energy has gone up strongly. We have a huge jump in energy. It's going to get a lot more expensive in Germany before it goes down.
And then there is the Stolperstein Project. Tell us what that is.
Let me show you all of Stolperstein. And this Stolperstein is interesting. It's the duplicate has been placed in Munich. This was a Stolperstein that was, for some reason, long story, very boring. There's the two of them, there's a duplicate. And this is for a man who had several reasons for the Nazis to kill him. He was Jewish and he was gay. And and you can read his fate and what happened here. They took him through a variety of places where they literally starved him to death. They starved him to death. I mean, they did that with a lot of people they felt were asocial. They just starved him to death. He wasn't sent to a concentration camp. He was sent to like a sanatorium where they just let him die of hunger. And
why don't you describe the project and what a Stolperstein
Okay, Stolperstein means stumbling block. It's a pun in German. And the idea is you stumble upon Stolperstein with your eyes, with your heart, with your mind, with your soul. You don't stumble when you see a Stolperstein. And they're placed in the sidewalks in front of the homes of the victims, Jews, gays, Sinti and Roma, which are gypsies, euthanasia victims. Anybody the Nazis killed or persecuted can get a Stolperstein. And not just in Germany. They're in all European countries where the Nazis attacked and Nazis overran, including everywhere from the tip of Norway down to the bottom of Greece, Sicily, northern Spain, and everywhere else. And anybody who's been to Europe has seen them. At least I know, I can't imagine you not having seen them, especially in places like Berlin where there are 9,000. And the idea behind the Stolperstein is we want to take commemoration away from where people can avoid the Holocaust. In other words, if you don't want to be confronted with the Holocaust, in the old days before the Stolperstein started in the early 90s, you just had to avoid going to Dachau or to Bergen-Belsen, all these concentration camps. But now, wherever you go in Germany and wherever you go in Europe, you will stumble upon Stolperstein. The idea is that each of these victims is being brought back from the obscurity, from the limbo of being forgotten. In other words, these people were herded, were killed in anonymity. Most of them don't have a grave or anything else, and most of them have no reference. We don't even know their names in some cases. But when you place a Stolperstein, that means every single person walking in my neighborhood, where we have lots of Stolperstein in Munich, will see the Gordon family, will learn that these Gordon families, wonderful people, these 6 people were killed in a variety of concentration camps. We'll learn about their fates. And our idea is, as a leading professor of Jewish history in Israel said, to provide a walkable, palpable atlas of Jewish suffering and Jewish life in the Holocaust. We're not just Jewish. And so there are 100,000 Stolperstein, which makes the world's largest project of commemoration. And as I say, they are found in 1,800 cities in 28 countries, 27 plus a few in Argentina, 27 European countries. And you will see them and you will be moved by them. And the idea is, it's individuals. There's no governmental organization. We don't get any governmental money. It's all done on pretty much on a voluntary basis. Individual donations. There's a local initiative of which I run in Munich. We place them in Munich in environments. I think it's completely democratic. Anybody can sponsor a Stolperstein, anybody can have a Stolperstein place for their relatives. And I encourage you, as I was talking with Linda, my cousin Linda Zlatov and friends, if you have the interest, if you're interested in Stolperstein, want to find out how to do it, just send me an email. We'll be glad to respond and glad to help you place it, no matter where they are in Europe.
Chuck, if I might, that ties in with the question I had. These municipalities, what is the process you have to go through? Do you just show up and implant it where you want to? Do you have to get city approval? Is there, or you just do it?
No, this is Germany and this is Europe. You don't just do it. So each basic city in Germany and in Italy and in many countries has its own Stolperstein organization. And they're responsible for the local area. As I said, we're all volunteers working on a pro bono basis pretty much. And you contact them. They often are online with their own resources. So you can check and see if your family members already have a Stolperstein or whatever. So for instance, I don't know, Alan, where you would be interested in. Do you have a place you're interested in?
A specific place?
Yeah,
No.
Somebody mentioned like Speyer. Speyer is a city in Western Germany, which had a tremendous, in the Middle Ages, was a beacon of Jewish learning and Jewish culture. And in Speyer, there's a great Stolperstein. They have hundreds of Stolperstein. You would contact the local organization. They do the research. They confirm the details. They organize the placement. They organize everything. All you have to do is, express your desire to do it, and they will take care of everything else. Of course, they're glad. It's not necessary, but if you give a donation, that's lovely. A Stolperstein costs 120 euros or about $140. But if you don't have the money, we'll find the money. Money is never an issue.
I was thinking more of the municipalities when the actual physical act of putting them where
right.
you
Well, that's
want to
organized. Well, that's a very good question. That's organized by the local Stolperstein organization with the municipality. In other words, it works like this. Germany is very much like the United States. It's a decision by municipalities to approve the Stolperstein. Now, in Germany, 1,300 cities have approved the placement of Stolperstein. Okay, and in the Netherlands, there's like 300 cities that have approved the Stolperstein. In Italy, about 200. So the approval has already been secured, but it's all run by the local organization. It's a very good question. So, I mean, you just can't walk there. I mean, it's a municipal property generally, and you have to get, work with the local Stolperstein organization. In many cases, the municipal organization maintains the local Stolperstein organization, so it's basically the same thing.
Have you ever been rejected by a city?
Yes, and the city I'm living in, interesting, is Munich. And Munich, which was where the Nazi Party took shape, does not allow Stolperstein on municipal property. On private property, yes. And on state property, yes. But on municipal property, not. And that is, there's an Orthodox Jewish community, and their leader does not like them. And she feels that Germans can't be trusted with them. And she has a lot of influence. So we have nearly 200 Stolperstein in Munich, and we place them, but it's a little more difficult on private property.
Does Poland allow them?
Poland hates them, and Poland, it's forbid, as you well know, you're very well informed audiences, there's many things you're not allowed to say about the Holocaust, about collaboration. But what is actually happening now, Poland, and I think you guys are all very intelligent, has realized something, that Holocaust tourism is a moneymaker, and now they're starting to approve it. There are 20 communities in Poland where you can place Stolperstein, but considering there were 3 million Jews who were murdered in Poland and their family members, 4.5 million Stolperstein should be in Poland. They have a long way to go.
A couple of quick questions here. Are they only put in front of the original buildings, or what if the building has been rebuilt? But it's still.
These are incredibly good questions. Actually, it's if many buildings have been rebuilt. There are very few original buildings in Germany, and or places, so they're built at the same address, even though the address may have changed, but the same location. The building is the same location, but the original building cannot. I'd also like to say who donates the Stolperstein, who commissions the Stolperstein, because it's very important to know this. Now, I see in the audience, I see hundreds of advanced academics here. I see brilliant people, some of the most brilliant people in Michigan I've heard. Right, Chuck? You said these people drive me on. They're so brilliant, I just don't know what they say. So who would you expect, Chuck and Alan and everybody else, who commissions the Stolperstein? Who donates the Stolperstein?
Individuals.
Yeah, but which individuals?
Family members. Heirs?
Second largest group is family members in Israel and in the United States. Very good. About 35% are donated or commissioned by family members. But often these Holocaust victims, unfortunately, you were lucky. The people I talked to tonight friends of Linda had survivors, but it's generally the people who live in the building. In other words, they learn that they are living in places where Holocaust victims lived, and to show their concern and to show their solidarity, they asked to have the Stolperstein placed. And that gets a very intimate relationship with them. In other words, it's their Stolperstein. It's not something that somebody else has come and said, you have to have them. They wanted them. They take care of them. Stolperstein have to be cleaned at least several times every year because, you know, they're outside. We have winter here too, like you do in Michigan. They need to be clean. The people put flowers on them, put candles around them, always on the 9th of November, always on the 27th of January, and mostly on Yom HaShoah, whenever it is. And this year it's late, I've seen. They place candles and flowers to commemorate the victims. So there's a tremendous sense of identification with the victims in their building.
Are there any in Vienna?
Yes, there are lots in Vienna.
Good. You said Argentina?
Yeah, that was it, because there was a group of Jewish children who managed to escape, and 300 Jewish children just made it out from the Nazis and got to Argentina. They were orphans, and their family members wanted to have Stolperstein placed to show that their family members in Europe hadn't survived. So they had the family members' names put in Argentina so that the children would see that their family members had been murdered in Poland and in Russia and other places.
And you,
I was going to say, is there any incidences of defacing of them? Is that a common thing or no?
It's every year a few Stolperstein are defaced, or, I mean, it's virtually impossible. You have to imagine this Stolperstein is buried, this is what, I can't think in inches. This is 5 inches into the ground and cemented into the ground. But if you put your mind to it, if you have a jackhammer, you may be able to remove them. The point is, it happens a few times every year. And what happens is then immediately we make a replacement, we put them in the ground, and the donations that pour in for the replacement enable the placement of many more Stolperstein. So Stolperstein are very robust, that was German, very robust. You can't get rid of them. They're there to stay, and we'll replace them if anything happens. But as we say, because these are the buildings Stolperstein, and the people take great care of them. And everybody knows that everybody wants the Stolperstein was there, so that dissuades them from actually doing anything. Stolperstein are less defaced, less seldomly defaced, less often than any other thing in Germany.
What if you don't know the address of where the person lived before?
This is an incredibly good question. I will say, what country are you talking about?
Poland?
Interestingly enough, Poland had very good records, extremely good records. And we have people, I don't know, Poland is, as I say, it's not my beat. I'm responsible for Munich, but I know, and I can tell you a story about that. I've checked Polish records and they're extremely good. Of course, they're in Polish, but they're extremely good. Poland has exemplary records. I'd be surprised if somebody who didn't devote themselves to researching it couldn't find them.
How can somebody help financially?
Well, what we are doing, of course, we do love to have donations, and we need donations. We do work on a basically pro bono basis. What we have started in Munich is what we call Guardians of Memory. In other words, you as a person can decide you want to donate a Stolperstein. And you can say, like in Munich, we're going to place Stolperstein and invite you all to attend. We will be placing Stolperstein on April 23rd, April 30th, and May 5th. And you can watch that. We'll be online. We'll have a Zoom link. You can watch it being placed. You can watch us praying Kaddish for these people. They're very moving. Family members will be coming, I've heard, from all over the world for this, because now it's possible again, presuming that it still is possible. And Guardians of Memory, that you adopt a victim, so to speak, and we pick out a victim for you, and you get the biography, you get a certificate, and when we place the Stolperstein, your name is spoken, we list you on our website, and so you can have an identification with one person. Guardians of Memory.
So if somebody wants to know more about donating or any other questions associated with this? Because there's a lot of questions that we're not going to have time to get to.
Oh, I don't know. I'm up now, I have coffee. I mean, I'll stay online as long as you want to. I mean, you all probably have things to do in Michigan, but it's now almost 2 o'clock in the morning. My night is shot. I'll stay online and talk to anybody. We have an organization in the United States. My siblings have founded it with help from my family members, Pazetskis, and it's called Zikaron, which means Hebrew means remembrance and commemoration. Zikaron, Holocaust commemoration. And our email is shalom@holocaustcommemoration.com. And if you want to donate at Stolperstein, just send us an email. Chuck has my email. You can send to any. We will get back in touch with you.
One last question on this for now. Please talk about Gunter Demning, who started Stolperstein.
Gunter Demning is one of the great heroes of the age. He was born in 1947 in Berlin from a Nazi family, and he is an artist, and he has devoted his life to eradicating war and commemoration of victims of the Holocaust. And he started off in 1991 with the idea to find out where the gypsies, Sinti and Roma, that lived in the city of Cologne, and everybody said they never lived there. And he researched it, and then he had the idea. His plan was to put plaques on the walls of the apartment buildings where the gypsies lived. The building's owners wouldn't allow them, so he started putting them illegally in the ground, and that spread in 1996 with the first real Stolperstein in Berlin. And in 1996, the first officially authorized Stolperstein, interestingly enough, were in Austria, Czech, near Salzburg, for 2 Jehovah's Witnesses who refused to join the Wehrmacht and to worship Hitler. And they were killed, of course. So these are heroes. These are great heroes. And Gunter started out all by himself with no funding and everything, and he just did it, and he built up a huge network. We're a huge family. As I said, there are 1,800 organizations, local organizations, and hundreds of thousands of people working to research, to donate, and everything else like that. If I have time, I'd like to say 2 more things which are very heartening about the Stolperstein. Do I have a couple more minutes, Chuck?
Please.
Okay. When I came to Germany in 1980, the Germans assumed that they were the last generation that would have to deal with the Holocaust. And we had huge arguments. As soon as I learned to speak German, they say, wir ziehen, and Naomi speaks perfect German, wir ziehen den Schlussstrich durch die Rechnung. That means we're going to, it's over. With us, it's going to be all over. And the opposite is the case. Thanks to Gunter and thanks to today's youth are incredibly interested in the commemoration of the Holocaust and cognizant of it. I have lots of interns from our Montessori high school, among many others, and they love commemoration. They love doing videos. They love passing out letters. They love contacting research and everything else like that. It's very heartening that the young people are so interested and so knowledgeable about the Holocaust, and that even more so every generation, Lador Vador, gets more knowledgeable. The other thing is I wanted to talk about my personal quest. My grandfather, Samuel Pozetsky, came with Linda and Gary. Linda's Slato, my cousin who arranged all this, got me in touch with Chuck. Thank you so much, Linda. Thank you so much. Our family was from Slutsk, which is in Belarus now, in those days, Russia. They came, the last of them came in 1911. And in October 27th, 1941, the remaining family members, were many of them who did not leave Slutsk. Presumably 69 of our first and second cousins of my grandparents' generation were murdered by the Lithuanians, by the way, and with SS officers watching them do it in horror. It takes a lot to horrify an SS officer. And one of my goals is to place Stolperstein for my 69 family members in Slutsk in Belarus. Now, the question that somebody raised before was very good, because the ghetto in Belarus, in Slutsk, doesn't exist anymore. The city has no relation to where it was before. There are 2 monuments for the murdered Jews in Slutsk, but I've talked to the local Jewish people there who handle the monuments from Minsk and everything, and they say, okay, if you want to find a spot where you feel like your family should be placed, you can place the 69 Stolperstein. So as soon as this war is over, as soon as Lukashenko, who hates Stolperstein for a variety of reasons, allows it, I will go to Slutsk and place 69 Stolperstein for my murdered family members who I never had an opportunity to get to know because they were murdered.
Harvey has his hand up. Is that okay? Yeah.
Yeah, But that'll have to be the last one for now, and we'll leave it open, as I said before. We're already,
Harvey, unmute yourself. There we go.
Okay, I merely asked, I had asked, Amy to put all of that information in an email to us because I tried to copy it from the chat and the copying doesn't work.
Okay, I will do that, yes.
Thank you.
That's
Okay.
a delightful idea. I think I will send a briefing on the Stolperstein and answer all your questions. And I encourage you just to contact me with your questions, just ask them and we will handle them. We love questions and we love to spread the word about the Stolperstein.
okay, very briefly, what else are you working on now?
So I have another organization, and not only Stolperstein, it's called Jews, and we do what I call Faces for the Names. We project photos of Holocaust victims and members of resistance on the buildings where these people lived and suffered. And it's been incredibly, I instituted with a very dear friend in October 2020, and it's hit on immensely. And we go around Munich and around Germany in the evenings with the support of local government, and we project the photos of these victims on the buildings where they lived. In other words, anybody in the building, anybody passing by sees the building's facade, and superimposed is a photo of the victim. And if you're driving in your car, whatever, you see it. And we do it in the heart of Munich and the heart of Hamburg, Aachen, Nordhausen, everywhere in Germany. While we are doing that, young people generally, or relatives, come and read the biographies of these victims. And we call this, as I said, Faces for the Names, because the Stolperstein give you the names and the details, but how powerful is it to see the faces? And yeah, we'd love some support for that too. We rely on donations and
Okay, yeah, people are starting to drop off, so I want to make sure that we have announcements of what's coming tomorrow morning and in 2 weeks, and we'll keep it open for questions. And I know a couple of you have your hands up. Today, I received notification finally from a couple of citizens in the Ukraine that they will be available at 10 a.m. tomorrow morning for a special version of Conversations. Now, that's all subject to the internet being up and our ability to make contact with them. So I hope very much to see you. And please send me your questions, what you'd like to hear us talk about. Now, they are employees of MacPaw, and that's the Ukrainian company, obviously. And they're also going to talk about how they plan on keep operating, even though they're actively in a war. Then, in 2 weeks from tonight, we are going to have what I think is a feel-good story. We're going to talk to the executive director of a high school in Israel that offers international baccalaureates. And the guiding philosophy of this institution is to bring together students from warring countries or countries that traditionally engage in hostilities with one another, tribes with one another, 25% Arabs, 25% Jews, 50% international, Greece, Turkey, South Sudan, Sudan, whatever. And she's going to tell us about the friendships that are formed and how these high school students become ambassadors for peace. We will also have some of the students joining us. That's 2 weeks from now. I think it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon, but you will get notices that will tell you that. So now we had a couple hands raised. Noemi, we are now in the part of the show where overtime and where Terry has had plenty of coffee, obviously, and is willing to entertain questions, additional questions. So I'm going to let you take care of it from here.
Yeah, Nomi has to take care of it, yeah.
So
Yeah.
Linda, you can unmute yourself. Okay, there we go.
Terry, it's just been terrific, having you here in our community. And I just wanted to let you know, and everybody that's participating still on the call, that I hope to have a family reunion here in Michigan and hope to have Terry here. And we'll be doing some type of live community event, maybe not this summer, but the following summer. And Terry, thank you for all that you do. You know, we
And
grew up.
Linda, thank you for all that you do. You know, we've been close since, we go back, way back, and grew up in the same town and everything. We've always been very close. Thank you for really, it's been a tremendous for us to get, it's very special to reach out to the Mishpacha in America. Thank you for everything. And thank you for everything you do for commemoration of the Holocaust, for your work with the young people and with your Anne Frank play and everything. I admire you greatly for the work you do. I feel very close to you because of that. And also we share a common passion for Israel.
Yes.
We love Israel, and I'm raring to go back there. As soon as I feel like it's safe, I will be there. Maybe we can all meet in Israel.
Yeah, that'd be terrific. Yeah, but you didn't get to talk, and I don't know if this is the time, about what your work has been with Israel, while you're in Germany.
Well, what I do is I very often